Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is your man Testament. Just want to say thank you guys for tuning in to the Umbron House. So today we're going to be going over the BlazeBrute ZoK deck that I ran at Delivery Crab Tournament, the Silver Tier event in Chicago. Came in second with this deck, which is pretty sweet. It's a freaking huge step up from placing freaking 13th out of 14th at the first tournament that I went to for Lightseekers, jumping to second place, which is pretty sweet. So the overview of the deck, it's going to be very simple, straightforward. It is going to be a little more in depth than what we did on Gresh's stream, and you know, for that purpose or whatever, I'm going to try to make it really quick. So, you know, just if you need to re-listen to what I said or whatever, I'll just rewind it. If anything, I don't want to make the video crazy long just because I respect everyone's time, and you know, I don't like myself sitting through, you know, 45-minute deck profiles. So anyways, we'll start with BlazeBrute ZoK. He is an Umbron hero. He's Astral, and his superior is in Solar, and his minor is in Lunar and Gravity, and his hero text reads, can carry 1 additional point of items. Very straightforward. That's what we need in order to get the Umbron Salvagers to actually get that extra hate, you know, that 8 hitting damage. That hate hitting damage. And he has 32 health as well, which is actually really nice. I really like the fact that his health is actually pretty high too, although a lot of people are able to get the Umbron Marauders right off the bat if they have it in their hand first turn, which that kind of sucks, but if they don't, I love the fact that he does have the high health. Next up, we'll go right into the combos. The first one is Enlightenment. It costs 1 Solar and 1 Gravity card, and it's a combo defend card as well, which is pretty sweet. So, you know, if you need to actually get this effect off to heal and deal damage, but you can't attack because they have Shroud of Night or Subjugator, this card can still play, which is really nice. And the effect reads, draw 3 cards face up. Each Solar card revealed deals 2 damage to your target. Each Lunar card revealed heals you for 2. So this is really great. The way that I look at this card is, if I can at least just get, you know, if I can just get the 3 card draw, I'm happy with that. Like that's the main thing that I look at it for. And my hopes when I play this card most of the time is, depending on what's on the field, if they have a Mountain 4 on the field, my hopes to get this to pop off with some Solars and deal 2 damage and just remove that clunky buff for me, and it's like all I'm doing is just drawing extra cards from it. I'm not wasting resources, you know, and wasting other actions just to, you know, take out the Mountain Fort really slow. And also, when you combo this card with Skyward Observatory, which we have in the deck, there was one time where I ended up drawing into 2 other combos that had Solar and Lunar while I had Skyward Observatory out in the field. I ended up dealing 8 damage to them because I had 2 elements of Solar on each, you know, 1 element of Solar on 1 combo card and another on another combo card. And then I ended up healing for 8 because it also had Lunar as well on that combo card too. So this really helps a lot, and it has a really cool little, you know, utility here and there. It's still like a gamble card if you're trying to rely on, you know, hoping that this will heal you. It's a gamble because we do run a decent amount of Lunar cards, but obviously this deck runs a lot of unaligned cards as well. So it's still a gamble. So again, when you play this card, I would definitely suggest that you play it, you know, if you think that you'll still be safe after playing it. You know, unless you're in desperation, it's like, oh man, I need to get that healing, and if it doesn't happen, then it's just kind of like, you know, you probably could have done maybe something else with the deck instead of playing this, and then you kind of screwed yourself over. So I would definitely say use that wisely, if anything. Next combo card that we have is Tidal Shift. Tidal Shift is 6 healing, draw 2 cards. It has Solar and Lunar as the cost, and it's very straightforward. There's nothing really more about it, just burst healing, and it lets you draw 2 cards. And this deck really needs the draw power, so that's why there is a lot of draw combos in here, and also some other draw action cards as well. Next combo we have is Sunstrike. It costs 1 Solar, 1 Gravity, and it says deal 7 damage. You gain 1 additional action. This card is freaking phenomenal for swinging when that extra action is used on Umbron Salvager. Man, like just dealing 15 damage right off the bat. Like people just don't expect it. Even with, like, you know, people know that you run Planetary Alignment if you're Lunar for the most part. So it's like people expect that. They expect, you know, to be ready to handle at least 12 damage. But when you swing for 15, like that's just monstrous. And on top of that, with Skyward Observatory, if you have that out on the field, you're dealing extra damage. You know, it ends up being out to, I think, 19 damage. You got 7 plus 2, then 8 plus 2. You know, 19 damage. It's pretty monstrous. Next we have Planetary Alignment. It's very standard. Deal 12 damage. It's a combo attack. It costs 1 solar, lunar, and gravity. Nothing more to it, and it helps a lot because it actually pays for a lot of the other combos as well. And even to pay for this one, we have Gravity Bubble, which also has solar, lunar, and gravity. And so the effect reads: deal 8 damage to your target, rotate all of the heroes' buffs to their final corner, restart all of your buffs. Now, I just want to pause for a second on this. This card honestly really came in clutch against an Exile deck that had a lot of Abyss Shades. It had Shroud of Night on the field. It had Putrid Shaman. I mean, it had Spectral Widow as well. Now, when it rotates those cards, besides the ones that require abilities to pop off, the ones that deal damage will deal each rotation of damage as it rotates out. So just do note that. Don't just play this thinking that's going to skip over those things like Crystal Warper. You eat everything that rotates for the most part, unless it's something that requires an ability to trigger it, like Abyss Shades. And Putrid Shaman won't deal damage, it just increases damage, so that can rotate out. But this really helps because it also rotates combo buffs as well. So this is a very good card for those types of matchups. Now that the combos are over, let's go right into our item cards. And so these are the 4 that I run. I run Fluxamo, DuskGlade Tome, Crystal Core, and Leeching Scimitar. Now, the play for me, if I have Tantosian Blacksmith first in my hand, the first two items that I always consider is DuskGlade Tome and Fluxamo. And even out of the 2 that I would rather, for the most part, if I'm going first, Fluxamo, because of the fact that when I play Fluxamo with Tantosian Blacksmith, I play Tantosian Blacksmith, get Fluxamo back, and then once Fluxamo is here and Tantosian Blacksmith's in my discard pile, I activate the ability, and I get frickin' Tantosian Blacksmith back. And that's such a crucial play for being able to get all of your items equipped as fast as you can, and now you're loading your Umbron Salvagers, like you're equipping them to frickin' wreak havoc. Which is pretty sweet, and this speeds it up so much. Like I really almost every single time would rather have Fluxamo out first right away. There's only a couple times, depending on the matchup, where I will debate on bringing it out first because I don't want the opponent to know that I have that. But like if I'm playing against Dread and they're playing frickin' buffs, like playing Fluxamo and being able to just get my action cards back or whatever really helps, because while they're playing buffs, it's like they have to rotate out first. So you got a couple turns, to abuse Fluxamo before they actually get something back to their discard pile. And you obviously don't want to Fluxamo anything back, from their actual discard pile back to their hand that's actually of value to them. Now, for those of you that don't know what these cards do, Fluxamo reads, it's a burn card. It is Time Element from the tech order, and it says defendability. All heroes move the bottom card of their discard pile to their hand. So just note that when you play this card, if your opponent has something in their discard pile, you're also going to be giving them advantage by giving them that card back. There was only one time where I did that, where somebody had something in their discard pile, but I personally felt that it wasn't of any value. It was Assassin's Guild, and it was in the very beginning of the game that they kept sending it there to gain those 2 additional actions, just draw, and I kept sending it back to them and giving myself Tantosian Blacksmiths and the Umbron Barkeeps as well. So I mean, you just kind of be the judge of that. So besides that, I mean, the only other item card that was very mandatory to get right away, if depending on if I got one of these out, the next card would be Leeching Scimitar. And again, it depends on which one of these 2 I have out first. And it all depends ultimately on how you want to pace the match. If you don't have a Spectral Guide in your hand and you're gonna need that draw power, then obviously you would get DuskGlade Tome until you got something that could give you some utility to be able to get your draw power out that you needed, like Dusk Burrowers, Dusk Burrow Feeders, or whatever the frig you call those cards. So this is really good just for the draw power. It says defendability, 1 healing if you have 20 or less health, and then it says draw 1 card. And that's pretty standard. It's really good just for mid-draw. I mean, mid-draw makes a very big difference in almost any deck, in my opinion. And then besides that, I have Crystal Core, which I run. I ran some Crystal Leeches on the side. And this says ignore any damage that would defeat you. When this happens, move this card back to your deck. This card is amazing. It's a very big OTK stopper, like, somebody can't just swing for 26 in one turn if you have Crystal Core, because they have to pop it first. Otherwise, they pretty much end up wasting their combo or their setup or whatever, and they have to work around that. So I really like that, although a lot of people did pop it, and I think people absolutely hate this card too at the same time, so I think they were anticipating it. And then lastly, in this card, to me, this was the one that I ended up switching out from Nuwan's build. Nuwan originally created the deck on the BlazeBrute ZoK deck, and he had Nitrous Hammer in here as well as some Crazed Bombers. And I ended up switching out Nitrous Hammer for Leeching Scimitar, and because of the fact that I found myself having a very tough time when I wanted to, just deal a little damage and still maintain my health and maintain, just the distance between my health and their health. Like, it was just very difficult, especially when they had clunky buffs. Like, trying to remove Mountain Fort with freaking Nitrous Hammer, it was a nightmare. I would end up dealing 4 damage to myself before they fully removed it, and by then it's just I didn't get any advantage off of it. And with Leeching Scimitar, instead, it says attack ability 2 damage, you receive 1 healing if the recipient has more than 15 health, which a lot of the time, like, I wouldn't even bother using this card once they were, down to 15 health. Like, this card, I really wouldn't use it that much. It would just start I would start wreaking havoc with the Umbron Salvagers and a lot of my like heavy damage dealing combos. So yeah, Leeching Scimitar though is really great for pacing the match. So this is a card I would definitely not use a ton in the very beginning of it, because you want to make sure that you draw all the actual utility cards, like a lot of the Lunar cards that we run in here. You want to get those into your hand, like the LunarShriekers for sure, before you just start dealing damage and then drawing 1, dealing damage, drawing 1, because then by the time that they actually have something going, some type of setup or tempo, it's like they'll do one card, play 1 card that actually hits you for 6, and when you realize those 6 turns that you freaking were dealing 2 damage and healing 1, it's like all of a sudden that's all gone in one shot. They just dealt 6 damage to you, and now they start getting other stuff going. And this is not a card that you want to use to try to keep up with them. No, this is just a card that you want to use, in my opinion, and this is how I played it, in a very more once you got some cards that you can sit back on, go ahead and hit them with the Leeching Scimitar and draw 1 and just continue to see what they do, and pace it out like that, as opposed to trying to really use this as like pressure per se. So that's just my take on it. If you guys have a different view on how to use some of these, whatever, like, that's cool. That's the whole beauty of actually having everyone's own perspective and playstyle too. So but these are the 4 item cards that I run in the deck. And then next we have our gravity cards, and so I run 2 Spectral guides. This card reads, draw 1 card when this enters play. And then it says defendability, draw rotation cards, which is 2, and it's a clunky buff, so as soon as you play it, like, I get to draw 1, and then I have to wait till I activate the ability, but then when I do, I draw for 2. And I would not increase this beyond 2, guys. I really would keep it at 2, and I wouldn't lower it at 1 either. I think at 2 is perfectly like where it needs to be, especially because you'll realize that when you play this deck, it really draws through a lot of the deck. Like, you end up really picking apart your deck really fast and getting what you need because of some of the other utility cards in the deck. And with the mid draw ability, with DuskGlade Tome, Spectral Guide, just being able to draw 1 as you just freaking play it. I mean, there's a lot of actual like draw cards, the combo buffs too, that actually draw. So Spectral Guide, very simple, very standard, and I wouldn't increase this or lower it. I would keep it just at that. Next we have 2 Pathfinders. This card is the only buff removal in the deck. These cards are the only buff removal in the deck. And it says remove 1 buff from the recipient, increases by 1 if your last discarded card is Lunar. Now, I sided one of these, and I also sided a Crystal Leech. But I would not main 3. And I feel like, with just 2, it keeps the tempo of the deck going. If my opponent is playing a lot of buffs or whatever, but they're not damage reducing buffs, then I don't really care too much, because you realize this deck, it just heals really fast, and it also deals a lot of damage once you get your setup going, which you can get it going really fast from the start. And it was very tricky triggering the whole value of this card, having Lunar on the top of your discard pile, just because there are a lot of other cards that I would want to play after Lunar, and we'll get to those as well, like to pop their effects. I mean, to get their trigger their effects. Sorry, instead of actually using this. But I think at 2, it's pretty good. I think at 2, it's really solid. Next up, we have Chimchu Infiltrator. It is a gravity card. It has burn on it, and it says deal 3 damage. If your last discarded card is Lunar, move 1 discarded action card to your hand. Now this card is really great because it says, you know, just 1 action card to your hand, any action card. So it doesn't have to be, you know, some type of Astral card or whatever. It can literally be, you know, the Umbron Salvagers, or it can be your item cards, which is pretty sweet. I use this a lot for Umbron Thief as well, and it deals 3 damage too. So it's like you're still applying some type of pressure while also you know, recycling some of the cards from your discard pile. I only run 1, and I'm not really sure if I would increase this to 2. I kind of go back and forth on it, and it's one of those cards that I would definitely, you know, consider for sure increasing to 2, but I'm not fully sure. I'd have to actually play test a little more. Next up, we have Starforged Warrior. This card's really good against like matchups that have like item cards, particularly like Magrock. This is why I actually had it in there, because I was worried about the Magrock matchup a ton. It says deal 3 damage. When this card is on top of your discard pile, all of the hero items are dormant. And it's an attack card, so it kind of sucks if they have like Shroud of Night. You can't freaking play it, which really sucks. And I didn't have a way to discard it as well. So that's something that you know, I'll probably consider in the future. But it's also gravity, and you know, this card is really good for just coming in against those matchups. But it didn't really see a lot of play when I played it in the tournament, and I ended up siding this card out every single time, just because a lot of the matchups I played didn't really run that many items, if at all. So, but it is a very good card to consider, especially if you want to slow down the tempo of some of those types of decks. So yeah. And then now we move to our solar cards. So I only run, I believe, 2 solar cards in here. Actually 3. And so we have Astral Priest. Sorry, that's Celestian Warrior. We have Astral Priest, solar, and it says deal 3 damage, increases by 3 if your last discarded card is Lunar. So typically the play would be, I'll hit them with Umbron Salvager, right, which is an unaligned card, deal 8 damage. Then I'll end up playing LunarShrieker, getting Umbron Salvager back to my hand, and then I'll end up hitting them with Astral Priest for another 6. So I'll swing for 14 in that turn, which is pretty sweet. It's pretty monstrous, honestly. When people start getting hit with Umbron Salvager and the LunarShrieker starts getting those cards back in the hand, people's reactions are just like, what the flip is happening? So this card, I wouldn't increase this at all. I would keep it at 1. I seriously, although it seems pretty good, I really like some of the other cards that I have in the deck that I feel like are just a little more reliable. And so my next card that I have in here is Celestian Warrior. This I would definitely consider increasing to 2. This card won me a couple games. I think it was a little bit surprising because people, you know, you see a lot of attack cards in the deck. You don't expect really that many buffs or anything. The only buffs that I have in there mainly are the draw buffs and the Skyward Observatory. So when people see that, it kind of throws them off a little bit. And this is a card that kind of can't be ignored. I mean, it says deal damage to your target. You hit them for 3, and then you hit them for 4, like, and you end up hitting them for 7, which is kind of crazy. And because of that gravity bubble, I'm able to reset this buff as well, and also deal 8 damage to them. So I mean, this card to me really had a lot of value because of that, and again, it won me a lot of games. So yeah, this card is really great. I would consider running it to 2. And then lastly, we just have a very standard Chimchu Militant. Deal 5 damage, it's an attack card and it's solar. And there's nothing more to say about that. It's just very straightforward, and it's reliable, and that's why I put that in there instead of Astral Priest, because it hits the 5 damage instead of, you know, having a chance getting that on top of my discard pile and, you know, trying to get the extra 1 point. I'd rather the reliability instead. So there's that. And now we get to my favorite part of the deck, which is like the Lunar cards. So I run 2 Moonlight Burrowers in this deck. This is a defend card. It is a Lunar, and it says look at the top 4 cards of your deck, draw 1 of them. Put the others back in the same order. If your last discarded card is not Astral, gain 1 additional action. This card's freaking awesome. Like, just opening up with this card in your hand, having a Tantosian Blacksmith or an Umbron Barkeep, like, this just helps to set your draws up the way that you want, like, to get the cards that you need fast right off the bat. Even if I didn't have a Tantosian Blacksmith, my play would be Umbron Barkeep. You know, I'd end up drawing 2, and then because Umbron Barkeep's on the top of my discard pile, I would play this, and I'd be able to look at the top 4. I'd pull that Tantosian Blacksmith. This gives me an additional action, and then I'd play Tantosian Blacksmith, get frickin' Fluxamo out, and just start picking back my discard pile up to my hand. I'd start getting my Umbron Barkeep, my Tantosian, and my Moonlight Burrower, and I did that actually maybe 2 or 3 games where I was able to fully get those 3 cards back to my hand, and it helped so much with just speeding up, all the setups that I needed for the deck to actually freaking pop off. So this card is really awesome. I would not consider running it to 3 though. I would leave it at 2, and I wouldn't, obviously take it to 1. I mean, 2 is really good in this deck. 3, I feel like, is way too much. It would just, slow the deck down, and you don't need 3 because you could just search your next 4 cards and pick what you want. I think seeing another one of these in there, it would just, really suck and make the deck break a little. So Moonlight Burrower. Then we have this is actually one of my favorite cards of the deck is LunarShrieker as well. It says gain 1 additional action. If your last discarded action card is not astral, move it to your hand. You already know, people. Using the Umbron Salvagers and then being able to hit for 8, and then being able to use this to get it back to your hand. Like, that's just insane. Like, the value is so good. And not only that card, I actually ended up using this and getting back my Crystal Core, and then playing the Chimchu Infiltrator on top of that to get my Leeching Scimitar, to get my items back. And I also ended up recycling Kriebel Monk as well against an Exile matchup, so he wasn't able to use his ability, and he kept removing it, and I would just keep recycling it and getting it back up there. So this card is really great. It has awesome utility for any other card that is actually, not Astral, which is pretty sweet. So... Alright, and then next up, I have Duskfeeder. It's a Lunar card. It says 3 healing, increases by 4, and if your last discarded card is Solar. It sucks because I didn't see this card enough. I really wish I saw a little more. I wouldn't increase it to 2, I don't think, and I wouldn't get rid of it. I think it was a great card when I actually did see it, and it came in hand. But, I mean, it's pretty straightforward, and it's a defend card as well, and there's really nothing else to it. So yeah, it's pretty standard. Again, I wouldn't remove it, but I wouldn't increase it to 2 either. I think it's really good just where it's at. Now, Skyward Observatory. This card is freaking gold. I really love this card a lot, although what stinks is that because this deck doesn't run a lot of buffs, this was an insane target for freaking buff removal. They would just remove this as soon as it freaking came out on the field, and I would almost never get a chance to really get it to pop off, which is a little annoying. Sorry guys, that's my dog, sheesh. So this card, it says increase damage and healing done by rotation. So it would rotate to 2, and then rotate to 2 as well in the final corner. And this card does wonders with Umbron Thief. That's what I really love about it the most. I ended up getting that off during the match, and that actually helped a lot. I ended up hitting for 6 and healing for 5, which is freaking awesome. And then besides that, this card comboed with Enlightenment. So you have it here. You play Enlightenment. If you draw any Solar or Lunar, I mean, it's like you're doubling the damage, or increasing it by 2. Depending on the actual element that you pull, which is really awesome. That helped me out a ton. So that was a really good card. I really want to increase it to 2, but I feel like, like every other buff that I play is not really that much of a threat, so they're gonna save their freaking buff removal for this card. And if I have 2, I'm sure they have 2 buff removal as well, and then it will kind of just waste a slot, if anything. So most of the time when I play people, their buff removal doesn't even get used because I don't really have anything for them to remove. Now to the unaligned cards, and this is kind of like the bread and butter of the deck. 3 Tantosian Blacksmiths. This is just standard. If you don't run Tantosian Blacksmiths with the frickin' hero that actually increases the amount of items that they can carry, then that's just stupid. Like, these cards are just an absolute must. Unless you're like Nature and you end up running frickin' those supply carriers or whatever, that works too. But man, these are like a must in some of those decks. For those of you that don't know, it says you may move 1 item card from your hand or deck into into play, gain 1 additional action. And because of the fact that you're not playing the item card, technically you're playing this, and it's equipping it right away, you can actually activate the effect of the item card, which is pretty sweet. That helps a lot with Fluxamo. Play this, Fluxamo out, get this back. Now I already have a really good setup to just start getting all my items out right away. And the MVP of the deck, and it's an Umbron. It just brings me tears of joy. Umbron Salvager. The effect reads 2 damage. Increase this by 2 for every item you have equipped, that's what makes it freaking awesome. Now again, the weakness of this deck is the fact that people can just pop your items and completely mitigate the damage that you would get, the value that you would get from using these cards, which happened a couple times. But because of the way the deck plays, with their being able to recycle your your item cards, that's where this deck shines as well. So yeah, this card is super crazy. I mean, just hitting for 8, it just makes people like, whoa, like what the flip just happened? You know what I mean? And following up with anything else, like using a sneaky creep or anything, it's like you're gonna be hitting for more than freaking 10, 12 damage. If you follow it up with anything else in the deck for the most part, which is awesome. And this deck, like it recycles these things like there's no tomorrow, and you'll be seeing that you'll be dealing like freaking, about 13 or 14 damage every single turn. Once you get your things locked and loaded, bam, then LunarShrieker, get it back, hit them with Chimchu Militant. They recover some health, hit them again, boom, for 8, freaking recover it back, hit them, with another freaking, I don't know, another card. It's just savage. And then not to mention, again, remember, you have a lot of combo buffs that deal insane damage, so like the damage just starts like being too much to handle, which is what I freaking love about it. And it's an Umbron, people, like come on. So those are the Umbron Salvagers, and then the good old faithful sidekick, the Umbron Barkeep. It says have 2 healing, draw 2 cards if your enemy is holding more cards than you. And this is great first turn of the game, the match. Like this really helps a ton. And if you end up getting Tantosian Blacksmith, you can Fluxamo this back to your hand, and it just helps you to be able to keep up the draw power until you get your your Spectral Guides or whatever. And also, if you have Skyward Observatory, this is just a really great card to pitch for 2 healing plus 2 because of the Skyward Observatory, and you heal for 4. So yeah, it's a must-have. I wouldn't lower this to 2. I did at one point, and I realized that it really slowed down the pace of the deck. So I would keep this at 3 by all means. And then lastly, the last 2 unaligned cards are Umbron Thief and Umbron Marauder. This did not see that much play, and I want to say I would consider removing it, although I did end up getting this to pop off with Skyward Observatory, so I ended up hitting them for 8. And then lastly, the Umbron Thief as well. This card is really good. It's really standard and straightforward, and I love the fact that it has the healing built into it as well. It just says deal 4 damage. If the recipient has more health than you, if the damage is dealt, you heal for 3. And that just continues to make the matches a bit more equal. And that's what I really like about the deck, is that the deck, it feels like it can just try to pace at a decent speed or whatever, and it can really it doesn't do the mill thing obviously, but it can actually sustain itself very well, which is actually very surprising because people look at this and this is a crazy aggro deck, but it actually really sustains itself very well. So if anything, thank you guys for watching. If you guys are new to the channel, just please hit that like and subscribe button. And yeah, this is Testament checking out of the Umbron House. Thank you guys.